welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something pretty intense. We're going to look at how two diseases can turn our own lungs into a battlefield. I'm talking about pneumonia and tuberculosis, and you'll see they have two totally different game plans for their attack.
All right, let's get right into it. Take a look at this chest x-ray. This is a classic case of lobar pneumonia. See that cloudy white area? Normally, that should be black, because it's supposed to be full of air. But here, it's completely opaque. And that means the tiny little air sacs in there, the alveoli, are getting filled up with, well, something that's definitely not air. So that really makes you wonder, right? What is actually going on deep inside that lung tissue? When there's an invasion like this, how does the body respond? What does that fight look like up close? Let me tell you, it's a wild story of inflammation, all-out cellular war, and some really dramatic changes to the tissue itself. Okay, first up, let's tackle the lightning-fast attack. We're talking about lobar pneumonia. Think of it like a blitzkrieg on the lungs. It's an acute infection that hits hard and fast, and it rolls out in 4 very clear stages. It really doesn't waste any time. Now, there's a key word you got to know here: consolidation. It sounds technical, but all it means is that process where your light, spongy, air-filled lung tissue, well, it becomes totally dense and solid. It gets packed with all this inflammatory gunk, fluid, and cells, and just loses all its airiness. And this whole thing follows a pretty predictable playbook. It kicks off with stage 1, congestion. That's the initial flood. Then it moves through a couple more stages where the lung tissue goes through these incredible changes in color and texture. And then, if all goes well, it ends in what we call resolution, basically cleanup and recovery. This is where it gets really interesting, especially when you see it. On the left, that's what a healthy lung looks like under the microscope. See all that open space? It's light and airy. But now, look at the right. That's stage 1 congestion. The blood vessels are all swollen up, and this soupy mix of fluid and bacteria just starts pouring into all those open air sacs. So, what happens next? Well, we enter this incredible next phase called red hepatization. And yeah, heper is Greek for liver, and that's exactly what it looks like. The lung lobe literally becomes red, firm, and totally airless. Why? Because it's just jam-packed with red blood cells, immune cells, and this stuff called fibrin. The texture, the appearance, it's shockingly similar to a liver. So here's the really crucial takeaway. This whole cycle, from the initial congestion to that red hepatization, then on to gray hepatization where the red cells start to break down, and finally, hopefully, to resolution, it's an absolutely massive dramatic transformation. But, and this is the amazing part, it's often completely reversible. The body just throws everything it has at the problem, and then ideally, it cleans up its own mess. Okay, so that was the blitzkrieg. Now, let's totally switch gears and look at our second invader, which has a completely different playbook. If pneumonia is a lightning war, tuberculosis, well, TB is more like a long, drawn-out siege. It's this slow, grinding war, and the body's main strategy isn't to flood the zone, it's to try and build a wall around the enemy. And unlike that fluid-filled mess we saw in pneumonia, TB has a signature move. It's called caseous necrosis. Sounds weird, I know, but it literally means cheese-like death. And it's this very unique, very specific kind of tissue destruction that when you see it, you just know you're dealing with tuberculosis. It's the absolute hallmark of the disease. And here it is. Take a look. This is what it actually looks like in lung tissue. You see that pale, kind of crumbly, yellowish stuff in the middle? That's it. That is caseous necrosis. It's dead tissue, but it has this really distinct, soft, cheese-like texture. Pretty wild, right? And this fight doesn't just stay in the lungs. Check this out. This is a lymph node that's been completely overrun by that same caseous necrosis. So as the infection starts to spread, the body's signature response just follows it right along. So when the body is faced with an invader like this, it switches up its strategy entirely. It's not like pneumonia, where it just floods the place. No, with TB, the game plan is containment. The immune system tries to literally build a fortress around the infection to stop it from spreading.
And that fortress has a name. It's called a granuloma. And it's not just a random pile of cells, it's a highly organized structure. You can see it here. You've got that cheesy, necrotic stuff right in the center, and then it's surrounded by this wall of specialized immune cells. We're talking macrophages, lymphocytes, even these huge things called giant cells. They're all there for one reason: to keep that infection walled in. Now, when someone gets infected for the very first time, this whole wall-building process creates something called a gong complex.
It's basically two things. The first little granuloma in the lung, that's the gong focus, plus the infection that spread to the nearby lymph nodes. Think of it as the first footprint left behind by the invading army.
But what happens if those walls break? Or what if the bacteria, which can just sit there dormant for years, suddenly wakes up because your immune system is down? Well, that's when this quiet, smoldering siege can explode into a full-blown, raging fire.
And right there, that's the key difference between a primary and a secondary TB infection. Primary TB is that first encounter. A lot of the time, the body walls it off, and you might not even know you have it. But secondary TB, that's the reactivation. It can happen years later, usually when your immune system takes a hit. And this time, it's often way more aggressive. It spreads further, and it does a lot more damage. In these really progressive cases, you see TB's true destructive power. That caseous necrosis, it just doesn't stay put. It keeps growing, and it literally eats away at the lung, carving out these big holes we call cavities. And from there, it's even easier for the infection to spread.
And in the absolute worst-case scenario, the infection can actually break into the bloodstream. From there, it can travel all over the body. When it spreads through the lungs like this, you get what's called miliary TB. It's named that because you see countless tiny little spots, like millet seeds, scattered everywhere. It's a sign that the body's containment strategy has totally failed.
All right, so let's just step back for a second and recap. We've really seen two completely different stories today, haven't we? You've got the fast, furious, fluid-filled assault of pneumonia on one side and the slow, grinding, fortress-building siege of tuberculosis on the other. So let's break down the key differences one last time. For pneumonia, the big word is consolidation. The lungs fill with fluid, get that liver-like texture, but the good news is it can often clear up completely. With tuberculosis, it's a whole different ballgame. Its hallmarks are those granulomas and that unique, caseous, cheese-like necrosis. It's a battle that can go dormant and just hang out, walled off, for your entire life. Which kind of leaves you with this one big question, right? What's more amazing here? The destructive power of these tiny invaders, or the incredible and sometimes self-destructive power of our own immune response? I mean, in one case, our body launches this massive, overwhelming counterattack to clear the field. In the other, the very walls it builds to protect us end up becoming the hallmark of the disease itself. It's just a crazy reminder of the complex, high-stakes war that's always being fought inside our own bodies.